So, I want to try yet again to not only draw your attention, but try and wring out some unnatural glimpses of an area that is so far removed from human consciousness that there is no way to talk about it. And it's not that it's weird in the sense of saying I can't talk about it because it has to do with creatures from a planet that only has a vague number and nobody's ever seen anything like them. It has to do with the fact that it is a part of what man is, and it has to do with the fact that no dimension, no series of forces can see a dimension higher than it is, can see a combination of forces more complex than it is. And so I have talked around this area many times, and some of you may believe that you had heard pieces of this before, but I am going at it with a little more intensity, and I believe that some of you might get a glimpse. It is simple enough, almost, at first blush in words, with those of you that can begin to see a bit of it. As soon as you do, you realize what I mean when I say that it is so far, literally, at such an angle removed from the wiring operations of human consciousness that it's just and it's this. The very things that an ordinary person will detail, will describe as being their problems, their difficulties, they, including all of you up to a strange point, look upon difficulties, problems, as being something, obviously, separate from you. Because everyone says, I have a certain problem. That there is I, me, and then there is the problem. And that the problem in some way should be talked about, should be dealt with on that basis, on that reasonable basis, on that obvious basis. It is something, it is a bad habit, it is a flaw in my wiring system, it is a psychological bruise that I have picked up along the way. It's a knot in the ball of twine that is my being, and in some way I've got to back up and unwind that part of the ball of twine and find the knot, pull it out, straighten it out. And here it is again. I'm telling you as simply as I can, and it is impossible to fit this into to ordinary consciousness, but here it is. When people talk about their problem, they are doing one thing, and it's beyond human consciousness. They are not describing a problem, they are describing themselves. A person says that they are again in the midst of an ill-fated love affair, which is fairly common. They're insinuating, or stating outright, if you give them enough slack, about how this occurs time and again. And so it is a problem. It's not just a one-shot deal. It is a continuing problem that they have been through more than several times. Not if it was just two people sitting around, two friends, two acquaintances, and one person says, here I am again in an ill-fated love affair. I can't seem to get out of it. I can't seem to make it work. It's just... And his friend or his acquaintance, another person, can then listen to this and apparently offer, or attempt to offer, some psychological analyzation of it, when none is needed. The statement of the problem is a specific, a precise analyzation and description of what the person is. not what problems they have. All right, a little more so than last time I brought this up. I hear a few of you chuckling like, uh-huh. But it is, you cannot hold it with any ordinary yellow circuit means. You may say, yeah, I hear what you're saying. But you cannot hold on to it. Everything in the ordinarily observable structure of human consciousness is arranged in such a way that this cannot be comprehended. This cannot be held. There is me, I, myself, and then there are the problems that me, I, and myself have. What cannot be seen through ordinary means is there is no me. There is no me outside of we. Now I pull that on this basis to try and stretch the area a bit to where you might get a different glimpse. The sensation that there is I, and then there are the problems that I have, is a variation of something other than me. The me talking now is the thing that has the problem. That is, the weak side of me is the one that gets pulled into these ill-fated love affairs. The dumb side of me, the more mechanical side of me, the side of me that was frightened by my mother's promiscuity when I was a child, has made this. But there is no me outside of we. Now I'm just saying we tonight and maybe forever, and you can fill in we whatever the hell you want to. The objective me, the subjective me, the conscious me, the unconscious me, the good me, the bad me, the sharp me, the dumb me, the revolutionary me, the common me. You can call it anything you want to. I'm getting sort of sick of calling it anything for you. I'm getting a little tired of even staying on this ground. It's not because you people are slow. There is no me outside of we. And if you get a glimpse of that, you understand there is no problem outside of me. Problem is just a term that must be used for contrast and binary sampling. And in everybody, there has to be the feeling that I have problems. To state a problem, to think about a problem, to accept the fact that you personally have certain problems is the height of speciousness, because you are detailing, and there's no way out. You can't say, well, I don't mean it, or you can't say, well, I sort of know it, or I'm working on it gradually. If you are running off the fuel that will make you talk about a problem, you do not see what I'm talking about at that time. You cannot see it, or you would not be in that position. If you can say to yourself, to not yourself, to me, to anyone, let me tell you about this problem I've got. You cannot see anything. There is no answer to it because it's not a question. There is no solution to it because it is not a problem. You are not describing a problem that you have acquired. You are describing, you are specifically, clinically, detailing, outlining, specifying what you in truth are. You are describing you as a person. You're not describing a problem. That sounds, since I've repeated in various ways here already, that sounds almost simple enough. You know, whether you could agree with it or whether you think it's some kind of updated, off-the-wall Zen idea, it almost sounds It's not reasonable. It sounds possible. It makes verbal logic within the confines of its own sentence. And then yet you turn your head and you cannot hold it. You can't even hold it in theory. You can't even remember it. It goes against the nature of being alive, the reality of it. It's not because that the idea is insane. It's not because it's information from another planet. It's not because of anything other than this. That the information it's attempting to convey is a half gallon's worth of information and words only go up to a quart. That I'm attempting to convey four-dimensional information within, perforce, the confines of 3D terminology. That's it. In the 3D world, you cannot make 4D fit. In the 4D world, you can't even make 5D fit. Someone gave me a question last week, and the question was more or less this. They were bringing back up my general definitions and mentions of what I meant by neuralizing. And the question was something like this, that if neuralizing is remembering, is observing something without thinking about it, then in some curious way could the opposite be true? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. Because in the describable 3D world, the, quote, opposite of anything can always be seen, and with a few can always be used, the same as the original. That is, the apparent opposite is the same thing. Does this have any connection to my opening paragraph? Yes, yes, yes. Well, I hate to deal with my own words, but let me see if that makes any. So that means to say that somebody doesn't have problems that they're detailing themselves. Well, what would be the opposite of that? All right. One of the possible opposites would be then those things that are not a problem to me are a detailing of what I am, actually. Well, who would have ever thought that? How can you get an outline of what you are if it's not a problem area? Well, all right. I've gone this far. Then I guess we'd have to say it would be that which I would find praiseworthy in myself. Is that correct? Well, how about an inquiry into what would be the opposite of that which is observed, that which was remembered? How would be that which was not observed, that which was not remembered? That if neuralizing, to use the example of the question that was asked, if you recall how I got into paragraph 2 of paragraph 1A here tonight, was if neuralizing is remembering or observing something about thinking about it, could the opposite in some way actually also be true? And I said yes. So, how about from another verbal approach? What would be that which I do not observe and I do not remember? How could that be of any value? How could that, if it's something I never noticed, or I'm not noticing now, I'm not observing it, and I'm not remembering it, how could that come into play? Well, since I've gone this far, I got to admit, I finally talked me out of the first part. There is no doubt that a man's problems are serious business, and they are real, because now that I've turned it around and twisted it somewhat, I can see the sophistry inherent. It's very enlightening. Because it could not be that there was anything to be gained from that which I do not observe and that which I do not remember. But wait. What if you could put together that which you observe and that which you do not observe? What if you could put together that which you remember right now and that which you do not remember? Would you not have something interesting? Those of you that chuckle for that then, would you not have something unusual? All right. Those of you that went that far, would you not have something astounding? Whatever you would have, I suggest this to you, it would not be in any wise a feeling of conscious separation from it. That if there was such a thing as a problem then, you would recognize that the problem is me. But problem would just be a word. You would have to take that which appears to be your problems, your shortcomings, and to make them complete just on the 3D level, you'd have to take everything in you that is not a problem. Which generally speaking, as you'd notice by now in the city, that which is not a problem is not that well thought of and not that often thought of. I mean, if you can now ride a bicycle, how often do you think about it? But if you can't ride one, and everyone's going out this weekend to ride one, how often do you think about it? That wasn't mystical enough for an example. How often do you think of all the things that you apparently can do? That is, that your we, has no complaints with. Areas in which you find that you have no complaint. How often do you think of them? Try hard. Can you be conscious of those things that are not problems to you? And surely in a size of this crowd and out in TV land, some of you smart asses will be sitting there listening to voices and you go, well, sure, I can do that. Oh, yeah? Are you sure that that's what you're doing? What's to be gained by being conscious of things that are not problems? How are you going to trek on some great mystical, spiritual, personal, intellectual, emotional, artistic quest if you're going to sit around and dwell upon all the things I can do? The things that give me no problem. That's not it. That's just the basis to work from. Am I not right? Then you've got to go from there and begin to whittle away, begin to work on, attack, attempt to manipulate those problem areas. It's only reasonable, if I may turn a phrase. It's the only logical approach. Let me give you a fact. Since I've only given confusion, I guess, thus far, let me give you a fact. Any real revolutionary info is as true backwards as it is forwards. Now that is a 3D fact, as much as 3D facts exist. That is one. And as either I or Kyroots have pointed out somewhere along the way, info is not really fresh. Data is not really revolutionary if it's reasonable, if it's easily adoptable by city people, if it is blatantly reasonable at first hearing. It's not revolutionary if it's not incendiary. And what could be more irrational than to say that information is not new, it is not fresh, unless it's as true backwards as it is forwards. But that, I regret to tell you, is a fact. Anything that can be seen as being true, being useful, being observable, being a fact. If you had revolutionary sight, It is just as true if you can see the apparent opposite. It's just as true if you know how to reverse it. That whatever can be said as being true, the opposite is true. Whatever can linearly be pointed out and seem to be acceptably true at this level, you can run it backwards and it's true. Now, I will grant you this, in case you think you missed something. There's hardly anybody alive can do that. At least you think that you are slow walking up here and everybody else got it and you hadn't. Let me see if I can expand that a little bit. How about paragraph 2A or 3? I don't know. The revolution. The revolution is a private attempt to personally redefine the people's public word complete. That will be tonight's definition of what all this stuff's about. The revolution is a private attempt to personally redefine the people's public utterance and use of the word complete. As in, what's the attempt, or what's the purpose in people doing anything, taking aerobics, taking up jogging, going on a diet, joining a church, joining a cult, going back to school, trying to be a better person? What's the point of all that? That all, regardless of the terminology of religions or culture or whatnot, there is one word that would fit, one description that would fit all of these attempts that I've just made up in any that you can think of, and that would be that the person is attempting to become more what? Complete. Whether it be following Jane Fonda's tape, or Pope Ironbritches, or Swami so-and-so, that all of them can fit into the description of saying that the people are attempting to become more complete. Now that is a common term. That is what I meant by the people's public use of the word complete. And from that basis, the revolution can be seen as a private attempt for an individual to personally redefine the word complete. Let me give you one possible redefining of the word complete, and that is lacking contrast. What would be lacking contrast? How about just one area? At least you think this is getting too strange. How about one area? Let's stick to something pretty spiritual. How about losing weight via a Jane Fonda workout tape? Think of all, right quick, you can do it, come on. Think of all that would be involved in a person deciding to take up an aerobics class or to buy a tape and to work out at home. All right. Obviously they got a problem, right? That goes without saying. They got a problem, they're out of shape, they're overweight, they're trying to take off some fat in one area. They got a problem. They got a problem. We got to face that or they wouldn't be doing this. They feel that something is lacking. And lacking a lithe, attractive body, such as Jane Fonda's. If I lost weight, if I was in better shape, I would be more complete. If you had no contrast, you would have no problem. If you had no contrast, that would absolutely redefine the concept of complete. Completeness would be no contrast. Complete would be having no problem. Being complete would be having nowhere to go. In the area of consciousness, the lack of contrast, I refer you back to me. Many, many moons ago, another way I pointed out what the revolution was about when I was pointing out, I was not using those terms then, like revolutionary consciousness, would be quite simple, direct consciousness. It would be being conscious as opposed to being conscious of something. Well, yes, I am conscious of my problems. I am conscious of my shortcomings. I'm conscious of my overweightness, my underweightness. I am conscious of the injustices in the world. I am conscious of my bad temper. I am conscious of the fact that you do not show me the respect that I deserve. I'm conscious of the fact that you're trying to be sarcastic with me, and I know what you're doing. I am conscious of the fact that life is short and insurance forms are long. All of that fits into city consciousness. That is not revolutionary consciousness, because it is all based upon binary sampling. It is based upon and dependent upon contrast. It is not complete. And to ordinary consciousness, the feeling of what would create or what would bring about a state of completeness or more complete is to take the area that contrasts with what I describe as my problem and in some way merge the two. But things are arranged in the city so that, another tricky part, either things never get merged, or if they do, as soon as they get merged, you forget all about it. And of course, nobody learns from anything. The merging is unnatural if it were to happen and someone learned anything from it. Without the contrast, there is no feeling that I had a problem. Without the continuing availability of contrast, there is not even the awareness. There is no human awareness that I, quote, overcame a problem, that I have, quote, done anything. The only person that can be a reformed drunk is a man who cannot forget it, which is why everybody loves a reformed drunk. Everybody loves somebody who quit smoking, because all they got to do is get a whiff of nicotine 2 blocks away, and they immediately go, help. I'm not talking about some physical reaction per se. They immediately want to hand out leaflets. They want to find out who it was. That's why everybody loves a reformed blank. You don't know at the ordinary level that there has been any effort made, any progress made, any change in my life. The shadows have not flickered out of the ordinary on the cave wall unless I can remember the problem, unless I have the past always here with me. How can you know where you've been if you don't know where you came from? How can we know our potential unless we know where our little feet are nailed to the floor now? How can a man know what he is without being fully cognizant of his problems and his shortcomings? We've got to be big boys and girls and face up to it. We've got to know ourselves. I repeat to you, everybody knows themselves. They just don't like it. So as far back as men have been writing and talking and remembering it and being philosophical, there's been this feeling that you have got to know yourself. And all it is they have always known themselves, but they don't like it. Everybody knows themselves. All you got to do, well, of course, you now know that I'm going off dangerously close to big-time reality. I'm getting close to Broadway reality. That everything a person says about their problems, their shortcomings, their self-attacks, their admissions of failure, even their admissions that I don't know why I do like I do, Their admissions that I am driven by demons, unconscious desires that escape my understanding. All of that is duck droppings. They have described themselves perfectly. They make Socrates look like he's taking a nap. Everybody knows themselves. They just don't like it. They're not supposed to like it. Now, I'll grant you this. If we're going to move up to another level of potential consciousness, take a corner, take a turn and say that people do not know themselves, and for me to say that there is some validity to that, you have got to go into the beginning of another dimension, though. And simply, the truth then, the correctness becomes, they do not know themselves on this basis, that they do not know that everything that they have said and felt about themselves is them. That is the truth of it from soup to omega, from alpha to nuts. That's it. But if that were an enforceable truth that I could whip upon the people in the city, you do understand, to quote myself again, everything would come to a screeching halt. No contrast, no conflict. No conflict. You would not even have the motivation, you would not have the energy to breathe in and breathe out. If a person had no, quote, problems, then they would not be conscious of themselves as a this or that. They would be conscious. If you held them down or tricked them or forced them or they agreed to say more than that, then they would be saying at another level what supposedly Socrates and others were involved with about know themselves. Then the person would say, all right, I am conscious, if you insist. All right, I am conscious, if you're going to force me, of what I am. And everybody has to say, aha, well, me too. You know better than I am. I got you to admit it, because I'm conscious of the fact that I got a terrible temper. That's one of the problems I got to overcome. I am conscious of the fact that I still owe debts to my family, my first two wives. I am conscious of the fact that I have blah, blah, blah. And then if this poor erstwhile revolutionist, I don't know what would happen to him after this, but then if he said, well, no, wait, you made me say it. I was trying to get you to see something. You forced me to say that I'm conscious of what I am. But see, you went in the wrong direction, because now you're saying you're conscious of these problems. And I didn't say any of that shit. I just told you I'm conscious of what I am. Now, I went too far there. But I at least gave you that, but I didn't say anything else. And of course, by then, the ordinary person would have thought, well, this man's crazy. And of course, the ordinary person would have been right, because he was crazy to go on that far, but I was trying to get you to see something, to drag your verbal attention up to that strange point where things turn into another dimension, where there's a possibility of turning a corner. You would be conscious, in a sense, of yourself. If you want, I'm not trying to play with words just to be funny with you people. But it would be, if everybody says the point of life is to know yourself, then I'd say, all right, yeah. Then with a different kind of continuing consciousness, you could say, or I could say, yeah, finally you know yourself. But then if you're waiting for the rest of it, if you assume that you know the rest of it, all right, you mean now I would have some very clinical, cold, steely-eyed, objective knowledge of me and all my warts? No. You went way, not far enough. Too far. Wrong way. No, I went too far, but if I'm giving you this. All right, I know myself, the revolutionist could say. I am conscious, hate to do it, not of, but I'm going to have to tell you, conscious of what I am. Period. And the people in you. They won't say, well, wait, I'm conscious of what I am. I just got through telling you. In fact, I was more truthful than you. I was more forthright. because I said I am conscious of myself, and I put a comma, and I went ahead and I detailed some of my warts. I was more candid than you are, the people would be saying to your revolutionists. If you're conscious of the problems, if you're conscious of the shortcomings, if you're conscious of anything that apparently is separate from you, whatever your condition is, then you missed it. You do not understand. You start out as everyone detailing yourself. But then you ended up the sentence by going, that is, it's a problem. It's something I can be shed of. It's a wart that I can have removed. It's something that a four-dimensional faith healer could take from me. I can wear it down. I can lose it. I'll pray it away. I'll fast it away. That it's something I'll lose. For a man to talk about his problems, I'm going to go into another paragraph of some kind. But for a man to talk about his problems, the man is talking about himself, not theoretically, not in some tortured Zen interpretation of big-time reality. A man is describing himself because a man knows himself. Everybody knows themselves. They just don't like it. And they call it other things. They're supposed to. Because as long as you don't like it, as long as you look at it as being something I have acquired, it keeps you what? Busy. It keeps you working for Mr. Charlie. It keeps you toiling. It keeps you active. It keeps you off the street. It keeps the blood circulating. Keeps the enzymes emming. And some of them zyming. If you are actually in good standing, a member of the church, if that's entertainment, and the master blaster pastor that Kyroots described, that is, the man who actually knows how life works, didn't throw you out. That is, he accepted that you were an actual dues-paying, up-to-date member of that church. Here is one absolute description that all of the congregation would have in common, is that not a motherfucking one of them would have a problem. Now, I'm talking about problem. I ain't talking about cancer and bad colds and lost your car keys and stubbed your toe. I'm talking about problems. It would be a church with no problems. If you had a problem, you're back in the city. You're back with the atheists, the non-believers. You're back with the rubes and the tourists. You're back with people that pay full price to a show that's been panned by every decent critic in town. You may have paid scalp prices for tickets that they're discounting. You've been had. But you got to look at it this way. You've been had by a champ. Not me. You've been had by the best of them. Because nobody knows your problems. Nobody believes the seriousness and severity of your problems except who? You. And believe it or not, you're the only person that really gives a rat's ass. Part of the social fabric of the city is some people apparently listen to your problems. And you apparently listen to some of theirs. But everybody knows this. They just don't like it. Everybody knows this. Nobody else gives a goddamn about your problem. Because they know what I'm saying. Everybody already knows this, they just don't like it, and therefore, you can't be conscious of it on a continuing basis, if at all. But everybody knows that when somebody says, let me tell you my problems about my new ill-fated love affair, they know it's not a problem. They know it can't be cured. They know I can't talk you out of it. They know that, well, listen, I'm going to point out to you, finally, that this is the 7th time you've done this in 6 years, And I believe that you're smart enough, old buddy of mine, that I can make you see it. Everybody knows that's not true. And for a man to say, well, I got drunk and wrecked my car again, got put in jail, but I'm going to quit drinking tomorrow. Everybody knows that's not true. They know that. They know them, they know themselves, and they know everybody else. And so they know that you're not going to change, you're not going to quit drinking. So everybody knows that. They don't like it, and so they can't be conscious of it. That's not the reason. It would be only the members of this unusual church would have no problem. Because whatever you describe as the problem, you are simply being redundant. You are simply describing again, for the God knows how many millionth times since you've been alive, you're describing again, hey, I'm me. Now, boy, that's a news flash. Stop the presses. I mean, I'm personally, for one, overcome. Talk about a major breakthrough. For a person to say, hey, I'm me. Well, I get a laugh now, do a little business here. But you walk right out, and you talk to yourself, if nobody else, about the problems you have, and that's all you're saying. And you've heard it all. You know it all. Well, I don't know. It's kind of different this time. This kind of love affair is kind of different. Well, all right, the little sticky situation I got myself into, all right. Well, yeah, and I did get arrested, and they did charge me with being drunk, but let me tell you the circumstances this time. It's not as cut and dried as it appears. What they're saying is, well, yeah, I know it looks like me, and it smells like me, and it sounds like me, but wait, this one time, this particular time, it's not exactly me. Stop the presses again. Yeah, you're right. We could be real crude and say, all right, if it ain't you, who is it? Didn't know you had a twin fucking brother, sister. Didn't know that you could be in two places at once. Well, sure, I can be here and I can be my problem. I can be here and I can be not here. I can be that which I approve of and that which I disapprove of. Well, God forbid they should ever get together. True. Not only would it be unsightly on our highways and byways of life, but it would spell your demise as an ordinary, decent, God-fearing man or woman. You would no longer be fit for civilized company in the city. Oh, yeah, you'd be fit, just nobody ever think to invite you anywhere. You wouldn't be dangerous. You would be, I fear, three-dimensionally boring, but that's another story. In fact, that's two other stories. Well, all right, it's three other stories. You won't get down to it, but the first two are so boring that... Paragraph something or other. If in the struggle to undergo, produce, create your own internal revolution, then I could say that there's a point at which you ignite, you have a jolt of igniting a third order sentient system, something outside what I was using last week as a description of a yellow or a red brain that apparently is interpreting all the sensual input from life, all the energy food. After such a jolt, after such an irreversible process has been put in motion, I'd like to point out to you that after that, there would be no proper way of thinking about or looking at anything other than the continual refusal to see anything in life within the limits of binary sampling. But other than that, there is no proper way. There is no theoretical way. There is no ritualistic, theological, philosophical background to this. Not just what I'm doing, but any of it that ever happened. And in any way that you still believe otherwise, in the great as vague as it may seem sometimes, the great verbal nexus from several different countries, even separate continents that seem to tie together the great teachings of Buddha, the ancient, all the way through the modern liberal interpretations of Judaism, of anything that seems to, always seems to, that adamantly states that there are proper ways of thinking about everything, or at least specific things. That's only true in the city. That is only true within the confines of binary consciousness. It's only true as long as there is something within that person's consciousness that they believe is outside of we. That is, that there's some information I need, there's some theories, there's some rules to live by, and they're outside of me. I mean, I can learn them. I can spend the rest of my days attempting to apply them to myself, to memorize them, to meditate on them. Once you have had a sufficient jolt that you know that something, as most of you know, I don't normally at all talk about what it might be. But I do want you to know that there is a point past which that there is no proper way of looking at, of thinking about, of considering, of neuralizing, of pondering, of investigating, of looking at anything. Now, it does not entail simply its opposite. Sure it does in the 3D world. But when you reach that point, you have got at least a toenail going off around the corner. And there is no proper way of studying, of thinking about, of looking at anything other than the continual refusal to look at anything, to see anything within the limits of a binary sampling. And of course that leaves you in an area, if any of you followed that for a second, that's even more obtuse, fuck all that, it's weirder than neuralizing. Because you would then be seeing with no contrast. And in the city you can't do that. 3D consciousness cannot do that. If neuralizing sounds complex, vague, try this. Being able to see, be conscious of anything, just anything you want to, process, person, occurrence, with no contrast. Well, I'll go ahead and answer. I'll tell you how foolish that is. That'd be the same thing as saying that there could be somebody somewhere that didn't have a problem. Jesus, give me a break, yeah. I don't know how I get off on some of this sometimes. Well, try to pull my how foolish that is. That'd be the same thing as saying that there could be somebody somewhere that didn't have a problem. Jesus, give me a break, yeah. I don't know how I get off on some of this sometimes. Well, try to pull myself back together here. Let's get down to something more direct. How about yet another possible definition of what this is? I haven't given one in the last 10 minutes, have I? But the art of the revolution, or revolutionary art, could be, for this side of tonight's tape, I could define as being the attempt to make the useful beautiful. You remember I pointed out one time, topographically, that everything that people possess, if they've got any reason they have any basis for civilized, sequentially logical existence, they would have no possession that was not one or the other, that is, useful or beautiful. But could you see that there would be an art to the revolution that could be described as the attempt to turn the useful, in your case, into the beautiful? If you can, then I ask you further, how about vice versa? Well, how about this? What if we were not actually talking about possessions? That is, we are not talking about Hoover uprights, Picasso prints, CD versions of von Karajan's 9 Beethoven symphonies, or a food processor, or a new Corvette. Now, what if we weren't talking about that? What if we were talking about something else? Well, I don't know what else. I just was asking, how about it was something else? What if you tried to picture, if this was possible, other possessions you might have? Now, you shouldn't laugh. Especially the kids shouldn't say things that quickly, because some weeks back I even tried to draw you out by asking the kind of question of, could you see possessions as being not simply stuff that you own, but apparently stuff that you are, your problems, your good points, if you got any, that you could look at them as possessions. On that particular night I asked you, on the basis of me pointing out that a reasonable person, man or woman, would actually have no possessions that were not either useful or beautiful, then I ask you, could you ponder your own characteristics, your own aspects of your personality and all that stuff as possessions, and then ask yourself, which ones do you have that fit neither the category of useful nor beautiful? And whichever ones you can come up with, then the big question was, why? Why do you still possess them? Why the hell do you keep them? And I let it go at that because, of course, I knew what the answer was. The answer is, I don't know. And of course, you do know, you just don't like the answer. But where I was trying to drag us toward right now, then still on that basis, if you could look upon the matter of possessions, not simply as physical objects that you have acquired, but what would appear to be aspects of you. Can you see that some of them, if you had to defend or if you had to analyze them verbally right now, you would say, there's some things, let's call them your habits, your characteristics, your traits. Forget where they came from right now. But apparently some of them are useful to me. And then apparently some of them not necessarily useful, but I find them beautiful. That is attractive. I guess ordinary people might call them mannerisms. I don't know, as a child, I was just almost overcome by fill in the blank, by seeing On the Waterfront. And so ever since then I've tried to hold my head like Marlon Brando. I know it's kind of pretentious, but I've done it so long now, I don't feel like it's pretentious. It's just part of my makeup, the way I walk. Sometimes I walk like John Wayne, or a woman says, sometimes I look like Joan Crawford. So you can have possessions, that is, personal apparent characteristics, and little mannerisms that you could say, well, I don't see that they are useful, but I got to tell you, somewhere I picked them up, I tried to imitate somebody, I thought I found them attractive. All right, we're not arguing the point right now. But if you had the ability to describe, to see for yourself, to be able to neuralize that the possessions that seem to be me, these characteristics, these traits, that I could divide up into either useful or apparently useful to me, like my temper, or like my shyness. They're things that just, because of what I seem to be, these particular traits or this particular characteristic seems to be useful to me. I can't defend it other than that. It just seems to be useful. I can be kind of put offish to people, and it seems to kind of protect my feelings and blah, blah. So there are parts of me that either seem to be useful and some that seem to be attractive to me or beautiful. All right, are we up to speed? Now I'm asking you, can you see that there is a way in which I can describe the art of the revolution as being turning that which is useful into that which is beautiful, and possibly vice versa? Now, are you up with me? And if you think you're up with me, then I got to point this out to you. Then we'd be dealing with that which would apparently be its own opposite. How could you turn the useful into the beautiful without doing away with all contrast in that particular area? How could you take that which apparently is attractive in you and try to turn it into that which is useful without it being merged with its anti-self, with its anti-Elvis self, with its anti-Christ self, with its anti-Moses self, with its anti-entertaining self? And if it were, what do you got? You got the hole without the donut. You would then have, I submit to you, consciousness without consciousness of. Your traits, your characteristics that seem to either be positive or almost approaching neutral would then be as nonplussed, as moot, as goodbye mama, as your problems would be if you understood correctly that by describing your problems you are simply describing what you are. You would be a man, if I may retitle that early American novel, you would not be, or you'd be beyond the man without a country, you'd be the man without a trait. Oh, you could fake it, like that kind of shit. Oh, you could fake it. You could appear to be interested in something. You could even appear, I guess, to be a little interesting by giving a little piece of biz, a little piece of shtick now and then, as to whether it had any validity. I don't know. Yeah, I know you know, but forget it. He knows it all. Well, as long as we're in the savannah of this paragraph, another one that I threw out without much exposition a few meetings back was I pointed out that you have got to be, if you're going to be a revolutionist, you have got to be your own hero. That is a fact. You have got to be your own hero. But then there's several more aspects of that to get even greater degrees of marshiness. And of course, watch out for the pussy willows. You've got to be your own hero, but then I ask you, who else could be? I don't answer real fast. They only do that in the city. They're suckers. Only ordinary people, as soon as they hear an obvious question, will go, oh, it's that one. If you believe that, get out the 3-card money table and bring all your money. Which one is it? Oh, it's that one. Yeah. Who else could be your own hero? And the people in you say, well, hell, almost anybody. Or else I wouldn't be trying to change. I would not be involved with this. I would not be wanting to better myself. I do have heroes. I mean, it's got to have heroes. Who else can be your hero? Who else? How can anyone be your hero? Get ready. Are you ready? Because some of you think that you're still arguing with that. Listen up. You are your one sole enemy. You are your villain. So, You are it. You look no further. You don't need any additional ones. Nobody can compete with you as your own villain. And don't think that that's just some personal quirk with you. That's everyone. You are your villain. That being true in the great 3D city of logic, if you are your one and only villain, don't you see? Don't you see? Don't you see? You are your only possible hero. You are your only possible salvation. Well, I talked myself into a goddamn corner again, though, didn't I? Yeah, I know. Well, I know what he's going to say. He's going to say, well, I cannot be my own hero as long as I've got these what? Problems. I cannot call myself heroic to myself, even in a passing fit of self-delusion. I can't do it because I know myself a little bit and I know the damn problems I've got. Now, a hero would not have the kind of temper I've got. He just wouldn't. So that's one problem right there. I cannot be my own hero knowing that I've got this temper that can just, at times, just unexpectedly explode. Let's see. How can we get out of that? Well, hell, we can't. Okay, in conclusion, sure we can get out of it. I'll drift back with you for a second back to the city and the 3D world. I shouldn't waste props. If you're going to be your own hero, you can have no problems. That's what you're saying. You and the kid are saying, well, I can't be my own hero because I know my own weaknesses. I know my own problems. I know I may put up a good front, but hell, I know what goes on in the secret recesses of my little mind and my brain and my livers and heart. And I am not heroic. If you understood that what I'm describing is me and my problems, they are not separate things. And if you saw you in toto, if you saw you sans any contrast, if you were conscious not of you with your problems, not of you with your shortcomings, there I go this far. What if to yourself you could fake it? What if there is no difference between convincing, you remember this one? Convincing others that you had an ability. What's the difference if you can make them believe it and you actually having the ability? Now, a whole lot of you laughed at that, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think I let Kyroots present that. As always, what if we're not talking about you and somebody else? Because there is no me. What if you could do that to yourself? What if you could, I guess it's getting late and we can be this crazy. What if you could, what would we call it, in some way fool yourself, trick yourself into believing that you had no problems, that you had no warts, that you had no shortcomings? What if you could make yourself believe that you were heroic, that you were the living epitome of an epic poem? What if you could do that? What if you could? Then I ask you, what's the damn difference, even if you were faking it, if you made yourself believe it? Now tell me that you can't get any glimpse of the fact that you have got to be your own hero. Where are you going to turn to? Who else can be your hero? Now, I'm not talking about people back in the city. I'm talking to you people. Back in the city, they always got heroes. That's what history is for. That's part of what death is for. You got to kill off somebody, and then you can have a hero. But hell, if you had died long ago enough, you'd already be heroic. Anybody could be famous if they'd died a long time ago. You got to deal with it right now. You have got to be your own hero. There's no way out. And of course you are correct. You can't be your own hero with those problems. I mean, you know the ones. I know and you know. And you are correct. There is that one small flaw. But, be that as it may, you still got to be your own hero. So, I don't know, maybe you can figure some way out of this morass. I don't really have any more time to fuck with it tonight. So even though it seems impossible and blah, 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 I'd like to say that in conclusion to that, this particular paragraph, I'd like to say, without any doubt, etc., and so on. Well, since we've had so much fun, I think maybe I'll quit. Having said that, I'll do one more. If you recall, several meetings back, I also pointed out to you what would be a revolutionary critic, a real critic, an astounding critic. Or if you want to really get cynical and jump back to the 3D world and poke around like that there's some flaw, some error in the evolution of the city, I can say this is what a real intelligent, perceptive critic should be even at the city. And that would be a critic who can review the subject at hand and not refer to anybody else. I mean, give me a break. They get down to the pop level, the rock level of reviewing a record and describe what this band is playing without having to say, well, certain Beatles influences I hear, hearing some of the influences of Squeeze before their initial disbandment, and of course some of the rather archaic cries within the vocalist that without any doubt shows his early intrigue with Lou Reed. And ordinarily you read crap like that, and if you're an ordinary person, you're impressed with the reviewer himself, that the man is that well listened, well read, insightful, been around. He'll maybe even pull out obscure bands that I didn't pull them out, that only you think, hey, not many people in the world even knew that that band ever recorded, and he knew all that. And it passes, not just music, be art, be literature, that they refer to certain passages of this book are reminiscent of some of the early Greek philosophers, and they name somebody that hardly nobody remembers. And you think, how impressive. And I say, give me a break. If you could see. Now, of course, we're fooling around right now, and I'm just being funny, talking about the 3D world in the city. I'm going to try to drag you somewhere else right quick with whiplash. From another viewpoint, that's not an impressive critic. He's not well-read. He's not intelligent. He's bullshit. He's jive. A real critic wouldn't have to fall back on that. Because from one view, it shows that he doesn't know what he's listening to. He doesn't know what he's reading if he's doing a book. He doesn't know what he's looking at. All he can do is look at it and think, well, that looks a little bit like that thing that Thelonious Monk painted one time. Yes, it has certain monkish influences. How come the son of a bitch cannot look at it and say what he sees? Why does he have to say, well, it reminds me of at least the post-Picasso pink period? Tell me what you saw. Well, the first few chapters remind me of perhaps the post-Depression era of Hemingway. God damn, I got a kid brother that's read Hemingway. You don't try to impress me that you've read Hemingway. What is the book? I might go out and buy this book, but it's brand new author. Tell me something about it. And you look down, and throughout it, Faulkner, Steinbeck, Mailer, over and over. Do you hear, we're starting with a little joke now, I'm going to try to give you some intellectual whiplash right quick. Back in the city, that's just the way things should be. But that is not a review. That is not insightful. And I was saying that a real revolutionary reviewer would only deal with the subject, the object, apparently under his eye of critique, and he would not have to fall back on comparing it to any motherfucking thing. That would be a reviewer. Now, are we back up to speed to tonight? What if you were personally attempting to be this revolutionary reviewer? And you were following what I'm describing, that is, perforce, you would never refer to anything extrinsic to the subject, to the object under review. In this case, you, yourself, without any reference to anything else. There would be the world's only allowable critique of oneself. That would be the only intelligent review of you if you could do it without any reference to things extrinsic to you. You would be a revolutionary critic. Your views, your opinions would mean something. I would want to hear them, other than the fact that if you were that good, you would not express them. But you would be a reviewer. You would be the world's greatest reviewer. Nobody'd know it. Nobody'd ever hear of you, of course, which is the way things work. But then I would have to ask you, just so that we don't leave on any note that may apparently have some stability to it or any logic or reason, then I would have to ask you this. If you had such an ability that you could be the critique, the critic, the reviewer of you, and you could be a revolutionary reviewer, that is, you could survey the object, the subject, in this case, yourself, without reference to any extrinsic name, value, word, idea to you, then I got to ask you this. Well, I know I don't have to. It's a figure of damn speech. Take a nap. I got to ask you this. How could you win a battle with no foe? How can you achieve a victory when you've got no opposition? How? How can you measure up if you've got no comparison? Now, as we fade out, the music comes up from the choir, and if you'll listen, you can hear them all humming. That's entertainment. Ciao.